Obama for president. Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle now. And Bill, I knew this would be exciting news for you. The great Michael Moore, independent film producer that he is, in recent public statements on TV and before a live audience at a music festival that he runs, has said that Michelle Obama not only should run for president, but that she would beat Trump, she would crush him. She is so beloved, not only by Americans, but polls around the world has shown that she's as respected, if not more respected, than Oprah Winfrey and Queen Elizabeth II. Bill Whittle, it's hard to argue with Michael Moore, isn't it?
It is hard to argue with Michael Moore. Michael Moore has as far as I've been following his career since, certainly since Bowling for Columbine. And I think I can say with some confidence that I have not ever seen anyone in the public sphere be as consistently wrong as he is.
Well, he did do that one-man Broadway show that asked the question, could a Broadway show bring down a sitting president? We all know the answer to that.
Yeah, apparently not. You really want to... And I know this is there's actually a point behind this. You kind of want to say Michael who, and the reason that you want to say Michael who is because Michael Moore's entire career, his effective career, was actually pretty limited to the period right around 2004, I want to say, during the George Bush re-election campaign seasons, right around and then.
This is after Roger and Me, or even later than that?
This is after Bowling for Columbine, okay. and right at Fahrenheit 9/11, I guess. Right, I think it came out there right in time for the 2004 election against George Bush. I was working as a TV editor on a show called Sunday Morning Shootout, which was a behind-the-scenes movie talk show on AMC. And in 1 year, or at least an 18-month period, we had him on the show 3 times. And all 3 times I had to just get up and take a walk around the neighborhood in the middle of the edit because I was just so fuming mad. But really, before that, he was just kind of a novelty liar. And after that, he's kind of a has-been liar. And his actual peak influence was, 15 years ago now, when he was an influential liar. And I don't use that term in the sense that anybody who just disagrees with me is a liar, or anybody who's not on our team is a liar. It's just that his entire career has been based on telling lies. And I know this to be a fact much better than the average person because I am an editor. And I know some of the things that Michael Moore did with editing. And in fact, Michael Moore, back in the eject days, gave me the first real example of what I thought was a very good illustration of a political concept in terms of, that people can understand. He's just if you throw enough cherries on the table and you get to pick whichever ones you want, you can create anything. A much better example is just to say if you have a table full of dots and you decide how you're going to connect the dots, you can draw anything from a lion to a cucumber and you would be telling the truth. They are our dots, but the connections are just nuts.
So let's just take Michael Moore out of this for a moment, because the story really isn't about him.
Right.
Although clearly, let me dwell on him for 1 second.
Sure.
Clearly, Michael Moore has the ability to get under your skin, and not just you, but the entire conservative movement. Why do you think that this essentially has been small-time documentary producer has been so effective at being in effect, a meme generator and a provocateur of the right?
Well, again, you brought him up for this show's topic. We never know what the topic's going to be, but I'm not aware that we've discussed Michael Moore in the last. I think the last time we talked about Michael Moore might have been when he said Trump was going to win in 2016, which, like a stop clock, he's right every now and then. Michael Moore's one. Look, if you're a conservative and you're or forget even being a conservative. If you're beholden to the truth, if the idea of being truthful about things is important to you, and if being on the side of truth is more important than a political position you might have, if you can be convinced that the truth is somewhere else, person of integrity will change their mind, which is what I've done, many times in my life. And Michael Moore is a particularly egregious example of just the living hypocrisy of everything that the left represents. Here's a guy who makes movies about the evils of capitalism and wealth, who sued Harvey Weinstein, who was not in disgrace at the time, and Miramax Pictures because he didn't get enough of the money when Miramax Pictures released Fahrenheit 9/11 amid enormous pressure from Disney not to. In other words, here's a guy who had a favor done for him by another one of his buddies, Harvey Weinstein, kind of crowd they hang out with, and this self-professed socialist distributarian sued the person who took a huge risk in order to make him money because he didn't get enough of the money that he made, which he would have protested in the first place. And all of his points are based on this kind of lie. I'll give you two specific examples, and we'll get to Michelle Obama, but this just really needs to be understood by people. The best example of Michael Moore's lying is at the beginning of I saw Bowling for Columbine in a theater in Santa Monica surrounded by liberals, and I knew it was going to be a rough ride. But he's so effective at how he does this lying that I remember many times during that movie, I just said, wait, well, you got to admit, the guy's got a really good point there. Give you a great example. Michael Moore's Bowling for Columbine, which is an anti-gun movie, opens with him going to a bank in the South. It's a small bank. And the reason he goes there is because the bank is offering a deal where if you open a new account at the bank, they'll give you a firearm, hunting rifle or whatever the case may be. So Michael Moore takes his team down to the South, and he basically gets everything set up. So in the movie, you see Michael Moore walk into the bank. He fills out a couple pieces of paper. He's very friendly and very nice, hands them in. In the bank, they hand him a rifle. He comes walking out of the bank with a rifle, holds the rifle in the air. They do a freeze frame, and Michael Moore says, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but maybe giving out guns inside a bank is not the smartest thing to do. Uproarious laughter from the very, very smart liberals in the audience who could penetrate the absurdity of the situation. But as it turns out, the bank was offering a firearm in exchange for opening a new account. And when you opened a new account, they gave you a certificate that you would then use to go to the gun store and buy the weapon there. And when Michael Moore said, well, that's not really good on camera, is there any chance since you're offering here, can we just give it to me here on camera? These kind, decent people who were really just perfectly trying to be as nice as they could to this man said, well, I guess just for the purpose of the movie, as long as the bank's closed and stuff, yeah, I guess that's okay. So this is how he operates. And this kind of thing is not just offensive to conservatives, it's offensive to anybody who has any respect for integrity of an argument. When you have to tell those kind of lies in that kind of fashion, and his entire career is just replete with them, the most famous case being Roger and Me, which is what got him famous, about a guy who grew up in Flint, Michigan, constantly trying to interview the chairman of
General Motors.
General Motors, yeah. And Roger and Me is about Michael Moore's endless quest to try and interview this guy who won't be seen on camera because he's so ashamed of the horrible evils that his company has committed. Well, it turns out that I forget what his last name is. That this Roger in question, the chairman of General Motors, had made many opportunities to interview Michael Moore, but Michael Moore understood that the story of him not being willing to respond is what made it a story. And that means that the entire story, the entire thing, whatever facts he may have chucked in there, the entire premise of the movie that made him famous is an out-and-out lie. And that's offensive to many conservatives and to many people of conscience, too, for that matter.
Okay, let's get to Michelle Obama, because one has to admit, especially if you've watched any of this week's debates among Democratic candidates, 2 sets of debates among 10 candidates each, that if Michelle Obama had strode onto the stage either one of those nights, she would have towered figuratively and literally above some of them, but figuratively above most of these candidates. In fact, I'll take it a step further. If Michelle Obama came in to interview for a job of some responsibility and leadership in a corporation, and then her husband came in and interviewed for the same job, you would hire her. why would it not make sense for the Democrats to get the most popular and probably the most competent and possibly the most experienced in government person that they have and put her at the head of the ticket up against Donald Trump?
Well, I agree with your statement. And the fact that Michelle Obama would probably lead the pack when she is, in fact, a disbarred attorney who hated this country until her husband was elected and then continued to hate it afterwards. And that this person, who is basically the wife of the person doing the job, which is kind of like going in for heart surgery and finding out your surgeon is a female, and finding out just as the anesthesia is starting to go under that this isn't the guy who was supposed to be operating on you, but it's okay because it's his wife.
Well, she has barely less experience than her husband had when he entered office.
You are correct. After 8 years in the White House, commanding an unparalleled staff for the First Lady, she certainly has administrative skills that Barack Obama didn't have, and this would really appear. Look, in terms of what Michael Moore is saying about her being the nominee, he may have a strong case there, but there's no way she'd beat Donald Trump. And the reason she would not beat Donald Trump is because Donald Trump is not polite enough to avoid mentioning the record of her husband. And while all of the Democrats, dreamily look back on the Obama presidency when you had a Harvard man who could turn a bon mot at a cocktail party with his European betters, and ours as well, by the way, they look back on those times as being something that everybody must want to get back, because if you're a rich liberal, why wouldn't you want to vote for a rich liberal? Unfortunately for Barack Obama and Michelle, every year that goes by, every month that goes by, Donald Trump's handling of the economy, international relations, and so on, goes to show you that the Obama, essentially the decade of Obama, it felt like half a century, but the 8 years of the Obama presidency didn't just damage the country in terms of what we saw in terms of low economic growth and weakening of the military and all of this social justice engineering and all the rest of it, but it's also an opportunity cost. It's a sunk opportunity cost. In other words, not only did Obama not perform very well, in fact, abysmally, but if somebody else had been in that office, you have to measure against where we would have been with that person as opposed to where we ended up with this guy. So if Michelle Obama wants to run on higher unemployment for blacks, lower incomes for everybody, higher taxes, a return to this sort of mockery, and putting pallets of cash onto airplanes to ship to the Iranian mullahs, if she wants to run on that, I say great, bring her on.
Well, I don't think that Michael Moore is arguing that her policy proposals would be any different than the majority of those who are already seeking the nomination. I think what he's saying is that when he looks at Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Cory Booker or Tulsi Gabbard or what is his name? Inslee. I can't even, Jay Inslee. All these candidates, he can see every one of those people going face to face with President Trump in a debate and being nicknamed and bullied to death. But he doesn't think that Michelle would bow to that. He thinks that she could take it and give it as well as she could take it. And the one word that you're hearing over and over again from Democrat candidates in these debates is the word fight. And I think Michael Moore is looking at Michelle Obama and saying, she doesn't just talk fight, she can fight, and she will crush him, he said.
Well, once again, Michael Moore is making an assertion that seems to be at odds with reality. The people who have read both sides of the Obama story, which would be people like us, have heard from the people as secret service agents and any number of people who've come into contact with her, that she's a thoroughly unpleasant individual, and that when she would take entire entourages down to islands in the Mediterranean and commandeer the entire site, that she just was treated everybody as if she was royalty. And so what Michael Moore doesn't understand, not that this shocks me out of my chair, you can plainly see, is that what people liked about Michelle Obama, to the degree that they did like Michelle Obama, and Michelle Obama might be very popular with Michael Moore's drinking buddies, or I should say smoking buddies, but certainly doesn't have that effect on the rest of the country.
She's filling arenas on book tours, Bill.
Fine. That's fine, Scott. She's a movie star. She's a celebrity. That's why the left likes her. She's glamorous and she's well spoken. And as far as they're concerned, that's the whole thing. But if Michael Moore's assertion, and he may be right about the assertion, he's not right about the conclusion. If Michael Moore is convinced that Michelle Obama is going to come back and fight back, then we're going to see the side of Michelle Obama that was so very, very carefully kept away from the American public for 8 years. You may remember, I remember, during the earlier years of the Obama presidency, before Michelle Obama became Michelle Obama, according to her book, she was specifically kept off of media because when she was off script, she was saying these kind of things that obviously, clearly she believes, that this is the most racist country in the world, and the only thing that America ever did right was to elect a black man as president, and on and on and on and on and on. And she has no record to run on other than her record on Oprah. And this kind of thing makes you look very good because when your entire experience of public interaction comes from a group of people who are giving you a sponge bath every single moment of every single day, it's possible to come off looking as elegant and poised as she is. But when you are confronted with people who are ready to fight back like Donald Trump is, then all of a sudden this demeanor evaporates in the morning mist, and you see somebody who's not terribly, certainly has no record of her own to run on, and furthermore, who is not a particularly pleasant person, and she can't have it both ways. She can't be this charming, smiling Michelle Obama, which I personally believe is a complete, absolute media invention, not on the part of the media, on her part. I just don't think it's going to be there. I think you would see in her what people saw in Hillary Clinton. And furthermore, as a close, I think after all of this Bush Clinton stuff, I think Americans have had enough of dynasties. I know I have, and I think that also is look. I can sum this whole thing up, okay? In a cocktail party in a skyscraper in New York, a bunch of millionaire liberals think that Michelle Obama would just kick butt out there in America because they happen to like her. And as they get more and more isolated, and they've always been isolated, but as they get more and more isolated from the American people, this New Yorker crowd. Who just titter, just so amusingly at these incredibly ironic cartoon headlines in the New Yorker. These people think not only that the rest of the country thinks like them, but that the rest of the country should think like them, when in point of fact, they are nothing but a group of navel-gazing, subpar intellects who make an entire living going around and telling everybody else how wonderful they all are. And I don't think that's going to sell in enough states to win her the number of electoral votes she would need to become president.
Just to clarify, Michelle Obama has expressed no open interest in running for the office, has previously said that she is glad to get away from the White House. And
so are we.
But Michael Moore is basically suggesting there are times when your country calls on you and you need to serve.
Yes, that patriotism being Michelle Obama's primary virtue, without a doubt. Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there is a band of people who have called upon us to serve. They are the members at BillWhittle.com, and we are doing our best to serve them 5 days a week with Bill Whittle Now, plus 5 episodes of Right Angle, the Stratosphere Lounge, Firewall, and other activities that happen at the BillWhittle.com website. If you're not yet part of that team, feel free to go to BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member link. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members for making this possible.